The Earth Alliance fleet surrounded the last Dakari warship, like wolves circling a wounded animal. It's floating high above Jupiter's stormy surface, the wreckage of 1,000 battles glinting in the cold light of the sun behind them. Admiral Alina Voss stood at the edge of her command deck, eyes locked on the alien vessel displayed on a large central screen. Knowing this final moment would decide the fate of two civilizations, her crew waited for the order to fire, hands hovering over controls, but her voice did not come. For in her mind echoed the screams of Earth's lost cities and the millions who had died. Yet also the words of her father, once a soldier, real strength is knowing when not to strike. And so she ordered a comms link opened to the enemy ship, stunning her officers into silence. And when the grainy face of King Virekdal appeared on screen, regal, even in defeat, she saw not a monster, but a ruler mourning his people, his red eyes burning not with hate, but sorrow. She spoke first, her tone calm, firm, and clear, telling him humanity had won, but it would not become what it had fought against, and she would spare his life. Not out of weakness, but purpose, for peace would be built, not demanded through fire. The silence after her words felt like a held breath across space, till Varric, stunned, bowed his massive head and said something no one expected. Then my life is yours. But let my daughter live among you, so she may understand what I could not. And before anyone could react, the transmission cut. And moments later, a small craft disengaged from the alien mothership, racing toward Earth with a diplomatic ID code encrypted in ancient Dakari. Admiral Voss knew this was no trick, but a gesture no Dakari king had ever made. And yet, many on Earth would not see it that way. As the ship landed, days later, on the skies above Geneva, the world held its breath once more, watching as a tall, armored figure stepped out, the alien princess, daughter of their former enemy, her expression unreadable, her movements controlled, her eyes scanning the human crowd before bowing slowly, stiffly, toward the Earth delegates waiting at the edge of the platform. The silence was broken by whispers, recordings, and the faint click of weapons being readied by nervous guards. But Admiral Voss stepped forward, offering her hand to the alien girl without hesitation. And in that quiet moment of contact, the future shifted unknown to them. A shadow watched from the high buildings nearby, tapping into the security feeds, marking both the princess and the admiral, sending a silent signal to a hidden network across the planet, a network that did not believe in peace, only in vengeance. As the humans welcomed their unexpected guest, shaking hands and posing for cameras, none of them noticed a low-orbit probe flicker to life in Earth's shadow, signal bouncing to a hidden station buried beneath a Martian outpost, long thought abandoned, and somewhere far from Earth, another Dakari, exiled, vengeful, and armed, see the signal and began to move. A Sarathal stepped onto Earth's surface for the first time, the weight of 1,000 years of war pressing against her armored shoulders as the cool air of the Geneva spaceport brushed against her skin like armor. Its temperature lower than she expected, but bearable. Her sharp eyes scanned the humans around her, soldiers in blue-black uniforms standing stiffly in neat rows, diplomats with forced smiles, civilians watching from secure walls behind glass, whispering and filming. And in the center of them all stood Admiral Alina Voss, calm and proud, her hand outstretched once more, just as it had been days ago in orbit. And Asera, daughter of King Virekdal, heir to the now shamed Dakari throne, took the hand without hesitation, her clawed fingers tightening slightly as their palms touched, a silence passing between them that needed no words. The official welcome was short, for Voss believed in action more than speeches, and soon Asera was taken to her new residence, a secure wing of the United Earth Diplomatic Academy, for her quarters were sealed with a mix of human and Dakari tech, both for her protection and that of others. And though the rooms were quiet and furnished with care, she noticed the cameras hidden behind panels, the drones that hovered just out of reach, the quiet steps of guards at every hour of the day. She was not a prisoner, they said, but she knew the feeling well. Her daily schedule began with orientation meetings, cultural briefings, language lessons, and training exercises, all designed to help her adapt. And while she was quick to learn human customs, many students and staff kept their distance, unsure if the princess was a spy, a tool, or a trap sent by the Dakari king in some long game of war. The only one who treated her like a person was Lyra Voss, the admiral's niece, sharp-minded but impulsive cadet who crashed into Asera during a botched training drill involving a misfiring drone, the impact knocking both of them down, with Asera instinctively shielding the girl from the explosion using her reinforced armgrat. Afterward, Lyra followed her everywhere, full of questions, jokes, and reckless energy, slowly breaking through the layers of silence Asera had built around herself. And though the alien princess never smiled, she found herself answering the girl, asking her questions in return, curious about human laughter, music, and strange food that burned her mouth, but tasted like fire and spice and defiance. Yet, even as the days passed and Earth's light became less foreign, a shadow grew behind the scenes as hidden groups like Terra, Ardent, who believed peace with aliens was betrayal, began watching Asera more closely, leaking false stories online, spreading fear, and planting agents inside the academy under false names. One night, Asera returned to her room and found a message carved into her desk in Dakari script. She dies. You die. And though she showed no fear, she activated a personal security field and scanned every corner of her quarters, reporting nothing, but never sleeping again without one eye open. The next day, Voss ordered increased security, but told Asera that fear could not guide progress, and that the people of Earth needed to see more than an armored alien. They needed to see someone brave enough to walk beside them, not above them. With this in mind, Asera agreed to attend the Global Peace Conference held in Orion Square, an open-air event in the heart of New Geneva, where ambassadors, students, and leaders from all over the planet would gather to speak, sing, and share their visions for unity among the stars, but unknown to them. One of the Terra Ardent agents had already infiltrated the security team, securing a device crafted with stolen alien tech smuggled off a ruined Dakari ship years ago, small enough to hide in the heel of a boot, deadly enough to take out half the crowd. As the day of the conference arrived, Asera stood on the stage beside Voss and Lyra, her armored form gleaming under the sun, listening to speeches about peace and forgiveness. But her eyes kept moving, scanning the crowd with warrior instinct, feeling the hairs on her neck rise when one of the guards shifted position slightly, too soon, too sharply. His hands moving to his leg. Asera moved without thinking, leaping from the stage and slamming into the man just as the device activated. A low hum growing into a shriek before it detonated against her shielded back, blasting both of them into the marble steps behind the podium. Chaos erupted, smoke and screams filling the square, with people running in all directions and security swarming the area. But in the center of it all lay Asera, scorched but alive. Her shield half melted, her chest heaving with effort as she dragged herself up and pointed at the fallen attacker, who lay twitching on the ground. Lyra was the first to reach her, shouting for help, her face pale, but her hands steady as she helped Asera sit up. And behind them, Voss gave the order to lock down the entire city sector, her voice calm but deadly as she spoke into her comms, demanding names, access logs, and full reports within the hour. As medical teams rushed in and journalists streamed shaky footage to every screen on the planet, the image of an alien princess shielding humans from a human bomb spread across the world, changing many minds but hardening others. And, in the dark corners of the net, encrypted messages began to spread again, warning that Earth had been infiltrated, that the Dakari would never change, and that the fight was only beginning. But Asera, Key, bruised and silent in the medbay, stared at the window as night fell over Geneva, her voice low as she whispered a single sentence in her own language, knowing someone far away would be listening. I am here, and I will not leave. The smoke had cleared from Orion Square, but the memory of the blast still hung heavy in the air like an echo that refused to fade. And though the peace banners still fluttered from the damaged podium, their bright colors now looked like mocking reminders of how quickly peace could fall apart. Aserathal sat upright in the medical ward, her back bandaged and her armor scorched, watching the news feeds play the explosion over and over again from a dozen angles. Each clip showing her shielding the human crowd, each commentator asking whether her act was bravery or strategy, heroism or manipulation. And though she said nothing to the doctors or guards, her mind was moving fast, because she had seen something the others had not. The device the attacker used had a core that glowed with a dim red pulse, a type of bioenergy signature known only to Dakari engineers, and it was clear to her in that moment that someone had used stolen alien technology to carry out the bombing. But how had they gotten it, and who had helped them activate it? Admiral Elena Voss arrived hours later, walking into the ward with firm steps and a tired face, holding a tablet filled with files, scans, reports that all said the same thing. The attacker, a former Earth soldier named Kellen Bryce, had no known ties to terrorist cells, no history of violence, and had passed all security checks. And yet, he had carried a weapon no human should have been able to build. Asera stood slowly, ignoring the ache in her muscles, and told Voss in a calm voice that the bomb had been crafted from Dakari war scrap, likely taken from the ruins after the final surrender, and that someone with technical knowledge must have helped. This narrowed the suspect list, but only slightly, for Earth had gathered a great deal of alien wreckage during the war, and not all of it had been recorded properly. The two women agreed to launch a quiet investigation, using the pretense of a diplomatic visit to gather intel from old battle sites, labs, and recovered tech storage facilities. Starting with Outpost 17, a hidden military vault buried deep under the Andes, where salvaged alien parts were kept under heavy watch. Meanwhile, Lyra Voss had started digging on her own, hacking into school records and internal academy files using backdoor codes she had learned from a friend in CyberOps. And what she found disturbed her deeply. Several staff members had falsified identity checks around the time of the bombing, and one in particular, a quiet janitor with no real background, had recently accessed the restricted cargo delivery logs the night before the summit. Lyra tried to follow the trail, but the data self-deleted after a few clicks. And suddenly, her screen went black, a cold message flashing up. "Stop digging, cadet." She rushed to Asera's room and reported everything, breathing fast, eyes wide, and Asera listened carefully, then nodded once, already pulling on her armor, cause she knew they were running out of time. That night, a small team made up of Asera, Lyra, and two trusted Earth agents traveled to Outpost 17 under the cover of a diplomatic inspection. But when they arrived, they found the main doors forced open from the inside, scorch marks along the walls, and the guards dead at their posts. Their weapons melted, a chilling sign that someone had used high-energy plasma to silence them. Deeper inside, they found broken containment units and shattered vaults where Dakari relics once rested. All gone, all stolen, and as Asera examined the damage, she picked up a strange scent in the air, burned ozone mixed with something else, something old and familiar. Ain't. She whispered the name of a Dakari warlord, long thought exiled, Valzor, a renegade commander who had vanished with a ship during the war's final year, rumored to have refused the king's surrender, and now, it seemed, he had resurfaced. Asera told Voss immediately, and a secret alert went out to all Earth's defense centers. While Lyra kept digging, her hands shaking as she traced coded messages moving across underground networks, some in human code, some in Dakari, all pointing toward a group calling itself Ash Reckoning, splinter faction that believed Earth's mercy was weakness and that the war should be reignited with fire and blood. Over the next few days, small attacks began across the Planeta Dakari Teaching Center burned in Tokyo, human Dakari research base in Kenya hacked and flooded, and always the same message left behind: trust the stars and they'll burn you. The Earth Council grew divided. T's, with some urging Asera's removal and others demanding a stronger alliance, while the people watched, confused and frightened, as rumors of a second war grew louder. Asera remained calm, moving between interviews, patrols, training simulations, always aware that eyes were on her, always knowing that if she showed fear, others would follow. One evening, she and Lyra stood atop the Geneva watchtower, looking out over the dark city below, and Asera said softly that peace was not made in grand speeches or shiny treaties, but in the choice to keep standing when others wanted to fall back into hate. Lyra nodded, quiet for once, and asked what would happen if Valzor attacked, and Asera replied, then we stop him, together. But neither of them noticed the drone that hovered far above them, slants recording every word, its signal bouncing across orbit to a hidden relay floating just beyond Mars, where a ghost ship powered by stolen cores blinked to life, its engines humming with silent energy, its course locked on Earth. And deep inside, a figure stepped out from the shadows, wearing old Dakari armor twisted with human wires, his voice a growl as he whispered, let them believe peace is real until the sky falls. High above Earth, in the cold silence of low orbit, a shadow moved where no satellite should, invisible to most scans. Cloaked by stolen Dakari stealth tech, empowered by hybrid cores humming with stolen energy. This was no ordinary vessel, but the Revenant, the ship of Valzor, the rogue warlord who had vanished during the war's end and now turned with vengeance in his veins and secrets carved into the walls of his cursed ship. And as the dark hull drifted between Earth's satellites like a ghost, its hidden sensors swept the planet below, marking targets, reading transmissions, and most importantly, watching Asera thaw. Meanwhile, on the surface, tensions grew sharper by the day, with protests rising outside the Geneva Academy, calling for the removal of all Dakari from Earth, including Asera, whose face now appeared on both banners of peace and hate alike, praised by some, blamed by others, her every step recorded and analyzed, her every word twisted by half-truths online. But she did not break instead. She trained harder, asked more questions, and searched for signs of Valzor in data, in whispers, in old records long buried. Lyra Voss, still bold and reckless, hacked deeper into Earth's encrypted networks, using a stolen admin code. And what she found was Chilena, deleted flight path, weeks old, matching the signature of ancient Dakari engines, and ending in high orbit, too high for any Earth shuttle, just outside the range of normal tracking systems. When she showed this to Asera, the alien princess froze, recognizing the engine code immediately. Valzor's personal command ship. The Revenant, long believed destroyed in the final battle near Saturn, was alive and circling Earth like a vulture. But how it got there and what it planned remained a mystery. Admiral Voss brought the information to the Earth Council, but many refused to believe an old enemy could return unnoticed, and warned her not to stir panic without proof, forcing Voss to move in secret, assigning trusted pilots to scan neo-orbit in stealth craft, while Asera and Lyra were sent to an old space archive station named Calyx 9, a forgotten orbital library once used to store battle records and old ship logs from the war. Floating vault built between Earth and the moon, long since abandoned except for autodrones and one quiet AI named Maris. As their shuttle docked at Calyx 9, Asira felt the strange pull of memory, the cold hum of space pressing against her skin, and as she stepped through the dim corridors of the archive, lights flickering and dust floating in low gravity, her instincts screamed that something had been here recently. Not human, not drone, but Dakari, someone who moved like a predator through shadows. Lyra activated the AI, which flickered to life in the form of a glowing orb with a soft female voice. Calm and polite, but hesitant as it reported unusual activity days, Aguke's terminal hatches forced open. Data cores accessed, systems overwritten by something that left no digital trace but melted one of the backup drives. And worse, several Dakari battle logs had been copied and removed, including the original design files for the Omega Lance, a weapon thought to be destroyed during the treaty fire, but now, possibly, rebuilt. Panic crept into Lyra's voice as she asked what the Omega Lance was. And Asira explained with a grim expression that it was the weapon of kings. Deep core plasma spear, capable of slicing through planetary shields and tearing capital ships in half. It had only been used once during the siege of Kepler 4, and its power was so great that even the Dakari elders ordered it sealed away forever. Now it was missing, stolen by someone who knew where to find it, and that someone was Valzor. Just then, the lights in the station flickered again, and Maris stuttered, saying another ship was approaching. No ID code, no com signal. Moving fast and docking on the far side of the station without clearance. Asira grabbed her weapon. Blade formed a vibrating light and motioned for Lyra to follow, both of them moving silently through the long, curved hallways as the distant sound of metal boots echoed from below. In the shadows, black armored figures stepped into the archive, faces hidden behind helmets with glowing red slits, moving like trained ghosts, searching for something or someone. And Asira realized Valzor had sent them to erase the last traces of his theft, to ensure no one knew what he planned. A quiet alarm chirped through the walls as Lyra accidentally brushed a sensor, and instantly the intruders turned, weapons drawn, firefight exploding in the weightless hall as plasma bolts sliced through air and ricocheted off walls. Asira moved like lightning, shielding Lyra with one arm while slicing through the first attacker with her blade, the energy sizzling as armor cracked and blood hissed into zero gravity. Lyra fired wildly, her aim sloppy but fierce, shouting warnings as more attackers came through the ducts above. But just as they were surrounded, Maris overrode the gravity system, slamming it back to fool everyone. Crashed to the floor with a heavy thud. But Asira was ready, springing up first and knocking two more enemies unconscious before they could rise. Finally, the last one tried to flee, but Lyra tackled him and yanked off his helmet, revealing a human face guard, furious, eyes filled with hate. A clear sign that Valzor had not only recruited Dakari, but humans too, those angry at peace, angry at mercy, angry that the war had ended before they could have their revenge. They returned to Earth with the prisoner, barely escaping as a revenant sent a signal to destroy Calyx 9 behind them. It's the archive bursting into flames that spread like a dying star across the orbit. Now Earth had no choice but to believe, for the proof was burned into the sky itself. And as Asira watched the wreckage fall through the atmosphere, her eyes burned with quiet fire, knowing the final attack was coming soon, and whatever Valzor planned, it would strike not from the sky but from within. In the tense silence that followed the destruction of Calyx 9, Asira Thal stood before the Earth Council, her back straight and her eyes calm, though her thoughts churned like a storm inside her. And as she explained what they had found, the stolen warlogs, the Omega Lance designs, the black armored infiltrators, who fought like shadows, many still looked at her with doubt. Not because they didn't believe her words, but because they didn't know how to accept the truth that the threat wasn't coming from the stars anymore, but from a war that had never truly ended, only gone underground. The prisoner they had captured, the human who served Valzor, said little except for one phrase he repeated over and over in a flat, cold voice. "She is the key." No one knew what it meant, but Asera had a terrible idea growing in her mind. Something she hadn't dared to voice aloud, not even to Lyra Voss, who now followed her like a shadow. Fiercely loyal and growing sharper by the day. Back in her quarters, Asera opened a hidden file from the royal database. Something she had locked away before leaving her homeworld. Within it were records of Valzor's last known experiments. Secret tests involving hybrid technology, forbidden science that had once aimed to combine Dakari and human biology in order to create something new. Something neither species could predict or control. And at the center of those notes were strange references to a catalyst, a living being, capable of syncing both types of energy. And Asera now feared the truth. It was her born of the Dakari king. Raised under human mentorship, trained in both cultures, her body had unknowingly adapted to Earth's energy fields and retained her native pulse, something no other Dakari could do without help. And Valzor must have learned of it through old war records or spies planted in the academy, which meant everything. The sabotage at Orion Square, the attack on Calyx 9, even the sudden rise of human extremists had been part of a larger plan, not just to revive the war, but to take her. She told this theory to Admiral Voss and Lyra late that night in a secure room, her voice steady but low, and though Voss tried to hide her shock, the truth hit hard, because it meant that Asera was not just a diplomat or a soldier or even a symbol. She was a weapon waiting to be used, and Valzor wanted to unlock her potential for his own ends. The next day, an emergency was declared, and Asera was moved to an underground facility beneath the Swiss mountains, a hidden fortress known as Shield Point, where only trusted personnel were allowed inside. And yet, even there, danger found them shortly. After midnight, the base's external sensors picked up movement near the ice ridge, and before the alert could fully sound, the power flickered, and a cold wind swept through the halls as all lights dimmed at once. Lyra was first to grab a weapon, standing guard outside Asera's chamber, her heart pounding as soft footfalls echoed through the tunnels, too soft to be boots, too sharp to be natural. And then, out of the shadows, stepped a figure, clad in silver-black armor. Dakari, not human, something twisted between. And it reached for her with a clawed hand that shimmered with energy, but before it could strike, Asera burst from her room, her blade blazing to life, cutting a deep arc through the air as she yelled for Lyra to fall back. They fought through the hallway, 1 against 3 now, as more of the creatures emerged. Strange soldiers with half-human faces and Dakari eyes, their voices filled with static whispers. And though Asera was fast, even she could not hold him forever until a blast rang out from the far corridor and Admiral Voss appeared with a full strike team, driving the attackers back through sheer force and locking down the base. When it was over, the truth became painfully clear. Valzor had found a way to create his own hybrids. And if he could make them, he could control them. Which meant that Earth was no longer dealing with an outside enemy, but with a threat that walked among them, wore their faces, and understood their systems. Over the next days, Asera grew more restless, pacing Shield Point like a caged animal, not out of fear, but out of a deep need to act. Because she knew hiding wouldn't stop Valzor, only confronting him wouldn't. Dan, as if fate answered her call, a signal arrived from the edge of the solar system. An old Dakari code used only in royal emergencies. Transmitted in a tight burst from deep space. It was from her father, the king, who had remained silent since she left, and the message was short. He moves toward The cradle of the tomb is not empty. Those words chilled her more than any wound, for the cradle referred to an ancient station buried beneath Mars, built long before the war, where early Dakari had first landed and recorded their history, their science, and their greatest weapons, including early prototypes of the Omega Lance. If Valzor reached it first, he would have access not just to the weapon, but to the secrets needed to activate Asera remotely, using her bloodline as a living key to power the device. The council hesitated, still arguing about risks and diplomacy. Asera no longer wait. She took a shuttle under cover of night with Lyra and a handful of loyal fighters, racing toward Mars at top speed while Earth's defenses remained distracted by growing riots sparked by planted messages from Ash Reckoning, the extremist group spreading fear across the globe. As they neared the red planet, the Martian atmosphere shimmered with unnatural colors, and from orbit they saw the signs of excavation. The Revenant had landed, and massive drills were already tearing through the crust, reaching for the buried tomb below. Asera landed far from the enemy sensors, her team hiking across frozen dust plains in silence, each step crunching beneath their boots. K's, each breath shallow in their suits, until at last they reached the edge of the excavation site and looked down into a crater of red and black, where alien machines pulsed with stolen energy, and Valzor stood at the heart, his armor glowing with both Dakari and human power. Holding something in his hands that looked like a blade and a beacon, he looked up suddenly, eyes locking with Asera's across the void, and for a moment neither moved, like two storms waiting to collide. "Okay." Then he spoke through a signal, his voice calm but full of iron, saying, "You cannot run from what you are, okay? Child of war and peace, you are the bridge, and the bridge must burn." Asera said nothing back, just drew her blade and charged down the slope, Lyra and the others behind her, into the heart of the storm, ready to end what her mercy had once spared, ready to face not just the warlord, but the part of herself she had never fully understood, the part born of two worlds, destined to decide the fate of both. The dust of Mars had not yet settled when Serathal stepped into the shattered core of the ancient tomb, the red wind swirling around her as if the planet itself had been holding its breath for centuries, waiting for this very moment, and now it whispered secrets long buried in forgotten halls of stone and metal, halls that pulsed faintly with the power of old machines that had once guided the stars. Valzor lay broken near the pedestal of the Omega Lance, his armor cracked, his breath shallow, defeated not by brute force, but by the one thing he had never truly understood: choice. For, in the final moment, when he tried to bind the ancient weapon to Asera's life force and make her a living trigger, she had turned inward, reached deep into the pulse of her Dakari blood and the heartbeat of her human spirit, but simply refused him not through violence, but by choosing peace over power, control over rage, which caused the ancient systems to reject Valzor, sensing the imbalance in his soul, and instead recognize Asera as their true bearer. The lance had powered down then, its energy core dimming, and the tomb had begun to collapse, as if its purpose had finally ended. But not before Asera carried Valzor's unconscious body to the surface, not out of mercy this time, but just as he would face judgment, and this time no one would escape. As Earth forces arrived days later to secure the site, and the stolen tech aboard the Revenant was finally reclaimed, Asera stood on a ridge overlooking the Martian plain, the sun rising cold and orange on the horizon, and she knew the war was over, not just between humans and Dakari, but within herself. When she returned to Earth, the planet greeted her not with suspicion, but silence tense, curious, watchful, and slowly, with time and patience, she earned something more valuable than fear or praise: trust. It was not given easily, not by the Earth Council, who now held long meetings about what role she could play, nor by the people, many of whom still whispered doubts. But the world had seen the truth in the ashes of Orion Square, the wreck of Calyx 9, and the tomb of Mars, that she had stood when others fled. That she had spared an enemy again, not out of weakness, but strength. It was Lyra Voss, now a rising voice in the Earth Security Council, who first suggested what few dared to say aloud, that Acerithal should not return home. Not yet, but stay as something new, something Earth had never had before, true ambassador. Between the stars, one who belonged to both worlds. One who could speak not just of war and treaties, but of healing, rebuilding, and balance. The proposal was voted on in silence, the final tally passing by only one vote. And the decision was made. Acerithal would be named Earth's first interstellar liaison, stationed between the united human colonies and the Dakari sovereignty, a bridge not just of politics, but of future. Her new post was a towering spire on the Pacific coast, built half from Earth steel and half from Dakari crystal, its walls humming with both languages, its chambers designed for gravity shifting, guests and atmospheric ships, a place where human generals and Dakari nobles could sit across from each other in peace. Her arrival was met with tight security and many cameras, porters asking questions, some fair and others sharp. But Acera answered them all with calm truth, never hiding her doubts or her hopes. When asked why she chose to stay among humans, instead of returning to her throne, she answered simply, because peace must be lived, not just declared. In the months that followed, old enemies sent diplomats, new treaties were drafted, and even broken worlds, like the ruined outposts on Kepler 4, saw rebuilding teams sent from both species. Acera visited each one, not as royalty, but as someone who had seen the edge of destruction and pulled back, and in doing so, she inspired others to do the same. But not all threats had vanished deep in the dark webs of Earth's data streams. Remnants of Ash Reckoning still plotted, speaking encoded messages, warning that no alien should hold Earth's ear. And one night, as Acera prepared for a midnight address to the Joint Planetary Council, her security team intercepted a silent drone hovering outside her tower's shield barrier. Its payload, a pulse bomb designed to disable her internal implants and cause neurological collapse. A cruel and calculated attempt to silence her forever. She survived only because Lyra Voss had installed an extra sensor layer that caught the anomaly at the last second, and once more, trust was tested. But this time it did not waver, and instead of retreating from the public eye, Acera appeared on every screen the next day, alive, speaking with firm voice and steady gaze, saying, "Fear thrives in darkness, so I will not hide." It was that sentence that turned even the harshest critics to silence, for they saw now what she truly was, not a weapon, not a puppet, but a woman forged by two fires, shaped by both the cruelty of war and the quiet choices of peace, someone who understood the pain of both sides and still chose the harder path. And so the years passed, and peace held, not perfectly, not easily, but strong enough to build upon. Young humans studied Dakari history in shared schools, while Dakari engineers learned human coding languages, and in the heart of it all stood Acera, the daughter of two worlds, the ambassador of what once seemed impossible. And though the stars still held mysteries, and distant systems still whispered of unrest, Earth had a new voice among them, not a warlord, not a general, but a woman who once spared a king and chose to live among the very people who once feared her, and in doing so, rewrote the future.